I've got some stories, and these stories are pretty wild, but the reason why I put this in there, these are stories that are part of my history, and if these stories can happen to me, they can happen to anyone. Like, I'm just a dude that's trying to figure it out. And these stories happen to me, so they can happen to anyone. The first one is when I was 16, my dad decided to take his own life, his choice, and that was rugged. And you just kind of like, how I dealt with it, now looking back, was just close down, repress, hide in my mind and try and get really, really intellectual. That was kind of, and I trained at the gym a lot, like 86 days in a row, weightlifting, didn't do legs, why? You know, just all upper body. So my elbows were cooked. My elbows were absolutely wrecked, like, and like I got to go again, so just ibuprofen, cream, go get a donut, because whatever, and then go train. And so it was just a mess. Yeah, I was 16, but I was jacked here. yeah, well, they did it right. So I was, complaining about my elbows, and my mum was like, well, stop going to the gym, and I was like, no. Because that was my vehicle to stop the grief. So I was just training and training and training. And then, when people start to validate you because of a thing, you just become that thing. People go, oh, you're getting bigger. And I'm like, all right, I'm just the gym dude now. And everything become about the gym dude. So I'd only get shirts that were like tied up the top. I still ate donuts, so I was like fat. And I only get like labels that would go across the chest because it'd like lift it up a little bit. The whole life, right? And this is what happens when you get stuck in a role. When you get stuck in a role, your whole life becomes about affirming that role. And when people challenge that role, trouble. Okay, part of the story. I'm sitting in the gym, 16, and I remember I was doing sit-ups or something, and I had this like flash of this one thought like jumped into my mind that was just like, maybe you're not the gym guy. And I was like, squash it back down, just keep going. And you just remember these little internal moments of like, what was talking to me then? Yeah, turns out I wasn't the gym guy. It took me 10 years to figure it out. But, so I've got this elbow, I'm grieving, I don't know how to deal with it, I'm training, I'm jacked, I'm ibuprofen, donuts, I'm a mess. And so, mum's like, stop training, I'm like, no. And I was stuck because I was in pain, but I didn't know how else to deal with it. So she goes, I've got this guy. And I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. And then she goes, takes 3 months to get in to see this doctor. And I was like, she's like, I'll put you on the list, we're gonna go see this doctor. I was like, all right, whatever. 3 months rolls around, I go in. Now, does anyone know where Clunes is out the back of Lismore? Right, it's a little, yeah. You guys might know, heard of this guy, Christian DeVoe, his name was. So I roll in, it's it's in the forest, it's a little house. It's like a doctor's thing, but it's in the forest, and I roll in. And I walk in there and I start just sweating, like properly sweating, beating down my legs. And I'm embarrassed because I'm like, this guy's, he's put me on his little plinth like bed thing, and I'm just sweating, just beating up. And he grabs a towel, which made it worse because he's like, oh, he knows I'm sweating. Puts the towel over my legs, and just all he starts doing is just rocking my knees back and forth. And I'm in my mind like, Mum, I'm 16, I'm a mess. What are you doing to me? Like, he's just rocking me back and forth. Lays me on the bed, puts his hand underneath my head, and just kind of like holds my head. And I'm stuck here, just going like, what's going on? And he starts sniffing like this. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, I'm just riding this out, whatever. 16, yeah.
Did it feel nice?
No, I was freaking out. It didn't feel. No, not at all. Mum was in the corner, like Mum was grieving as well. She didn't know what was going on. We were all a mess. And then he stands up and goes to the back corner of the room. I'm still in the bed. Now, God, by the way, there's not much instruction going on. Like, he's not telling me kind of what's next. And he gets up and he goes, this is wild. He gets up and he goes, so when did your dad die? And I was like, and my whole body just like shuddered on the inside. And I was like, 6 months ago or whatever it was, a year ago. Mum just in the corner, dying. And I'm like, the irrational mind kicks in. Oh, mum's told him. And I look straight at her and she's like a mess. And I'm like, oh, she didn't tell him. She didn't tell him at all. So I look at him, he's in the corner, I'm like, when did Dad die? This, I'm a mess. And he comes over and he goes, liver. Just starts like, whatever that meant in his world. You know, he starts poking me in the stomach. And then that was it, that was it. And he's like, all right, get out of here. I'm like, huh? You can't just drop bombs on me like that and walk out. And as we walk out, Mum's a mess, by the way, like just still a mess. And we're walking out and he goes, oh, by the way, there's a box of water bottles on the way out. Make sure you grab one on the way out because you're gonna vomit. And I was like, I felt fine. I was absolutely fine. I was like, I'm not grabbing a water bottle. Walk out, absolutely fine. I'm in the car on the way back on the windy roads. 5 minutes later, oh, just projectile out the window. And what do you do with that? Mum's driving. I'm like, I needed some kind of like explanation. When you've got a 16-year-old mind in a family of grief and you have a situation like that, the only thing to do is just go, swallow that, move on. So it's 2 days over the weekend. I go back to school on Monday. Just can't wait to school to finish so I can go to the gym, get on the bus, get my donut, second bus, get in the gym. My elbows are fine. And I'm like, I'm back. My elbows were absolutely fine. Yeah, so, you know, what do you do with that kind of stuff? And so I just kind of moved on. And then it was about, let's say probably a year later. Yeah, I was in year 11. A year later, I came back and Mum used to live on a golf course, near a golf course. It's like, oh, I'll go for a walk along the golf course. Sun was coming down, walking along the golf course. And I just remember seeing all these like shades of green. There was obviously the green, trees, all that jazz. No one was playing, I was walking down the middle. And I got lifted, like I felt like energy just kind of lifted up, out. And I could see the whole golf course, every single hole in detail. I could move through every single hole. Something had happened. I wasn't in my body exactly. I'm 17, you know, whatever. I can see every single hole in detail. And I come back in my body, I'm on my back on the green looking up at the stars. And I'm just sitting there going, all right, you know, what do you do with scenarios like that? When you're that young, the rational mind just goes, oh, I'm just losing it. Squash it down, keep going to the gym. And that night, and we never do this. We never, ask my brother, did we ever go to the golf course? Never. Did we ever go to like Chinese at the golf course? No, exactly. So that night, Mum goes, we're going to Chinese at the golf course. I'm like, oh, back to this golf course. The golf course is a death trap. I don't want to go to the golf course. Walking into the golf course and we go up to the food, like what? Why do always golf courses have Chinese food? Like, it's a thing. It's always a bit dirty, eh? And Mum goes, let's go to the meat raffles. I'm like, oh, all right. You know, so we finish up and go to the meat raffles. I'm sitting there and like pretty not interested. I'm sitting there and bang, this same kind of feeling happens again. And this thing popped in my head. It's 2506. Remember, clear as day, 2506. And I was like, next meat raffle is going to be 2506. 2506. And I was like, ugh, golf course is killing me. What's happening here? And again, you're just like, you can't share that with anyone at 17. They just go, yeah, right, whatever.